How to invest your first $1,000 in 2023. What do you know about the fastest self-made billionaire ever? Do you even know who this person is? Now, there are probably many names of well-known billionaires running through your head, but you have no idea about the one that achieved the goal in the shortest period of time, right? And I bet you want to know how. Jay Walker is an American entrepreneur who owns 12 business method patents and 240 others pending. In less than a year, he managed to join the Billionaires Club and do what Warren Buffett took 55 years. How? Well, he understood the way the world was moving, so during the dot-com bubble, he launched Priceline.com, and his net worth instantly jumped from zero to billions. Although this was an amazing move that let him make a great amount of money to start with, this wasn't enough for him to be able to stay at that place because when the bubble burst, his net worth crashed as well. So while Jay had a great chance to lose everything, Buffett was still at the top of the list and wasn't planning to go anywhere anytime soon. And that's exactly the kind of wealth you want to build. But first, you need to understand that the money game isn't easy. It's very competitive, tough and ruthless, and it's very easy to get lost if you don't know the rules. The very common problem most people face is that they don't know how to make their money work for them. So they spend the majority of their lives working very hard. Some of them manage to make a very good amount of money, but they simply don't know how to multiply it. Do you know? Are you the one that knows the key or the one that doesn't? To make your money work for you, you need to learn how to invest. So just knowing that investments are a thing isn't enough. You really need to learn the way of investing that can accumulate income, and then you'll be able to make good investments and basically make your money work for you. Imagine you have been saving some money regularly and now you have an extra $1,000 in your bank account. That's great because nearly 70% of USA residents don't have any extra money in their bank accounts, so you have an advantage already. The important thing now that you have money is to resist the temptation of spending it on a fancy bag or a great new gadget and rather invest it. And if you have never invested before, you must be wondering how to properly invest your first $1,000, right? There are millions of questions running through your head. You don't know what to invest in. Should it be stocks or real estate? What kind of stocks should you buy? And is $1,000 even enough to make an investment? Well, I have great news for you. You can put those worries to an end because in today's video, I'm gonna answer all of these questions and explain the proper way to make your first investment. Let's jump right in. The best way to learn is through an example. So let's say you've worked very hard and saved $300,000. With this amount of money, you can go to the Ferrari store, choose the model you like, and spend your savings on it. So everybody could know that you managed to earn and save a lot and then spend it on a luxury item you like, right? But what you can also do with this amount is you can buy a house or a flat and rent it out. By spending money this way, you'll be able to receive around $2,000 monthly. You can also sell it and get your initial investment back. But the value of your property might also appreciate, so you will be able to sell it for a higher price than you initially paid for it. Now, the more realistic situation is that you saved around $1,000, which is not even nearly enough to buy any property. But the good news is that you can invest it in something else and let it grow. And then you could invest in a property later. Once this initial $1,000 grows into multiple hundreds of thousands. The easiest way would be to deposit it into a savings account and generate interest. You're probably thinking that the bank wouldn't pay you for keeping your money, but rather charge you, right? Well, you're completely wrong. The way banks actually work is that they're gonna take your money, loan it to somebody else at a higher rate, and they will then share a portion of that profit with you. But the problem here is that the interest on the deposit account is so low that it isn't actually worth it, because the highest rate you could possibly get is around 0.8%. So if you do the math, this basically means that if you invest $1,000 today into a savings account, in 12 months you'll receive only $8, which is extremely low because the Fed targets the inflation rate of 2 to 3%, which means unless you're making 2 to 3%, the real value of your money will depreciate over time, which means that every year the number of goods you could buy with it is lower and lower. The reason interest rates are so low on the deposit is that interest rates in general have been very low since the 2020 global crisis forced the Fed to lower them in order to encourage everyone to borrow money and spend it. This means that in 2023, interest rates are increasing by 1 to 2 and even 3%. Therefore, interest rates on savings accounts are rising as well. So your second option is to buy government bonds. And what the hell are those? A government bond is a security issued by the government to raise money to support government spending. So when the government, for example, wants to build a school and it doesn't have money, it issues an IOU, a piece of paper that says that whoever owns is owed a certain amount of money plus the interest by the US government. Because every investment carries a certain level of risk with it, then what are the chances that the US government will default on its loan if you are loaning the money to them? The US government would go bankrupt only if the entire US economy failed, which is exactly why the US bonds are considered the safest investments in the world. However, if you want to make a higher return like 10 to 30%, then you'll need to consider investing in the stock market. Tesla is the perfect example of this. Amazon's stock price increased by over 80% in 2020, Google's stock price increased by almost 30%, whereas Tesla's stock increased by 721%. The question is clear: why invest anywhere else when the stock market allows you to double or even triple your money? And the answer is very simple: because of the risk. Although it's risk-free to a certain extent, investing in individual companies is a double-ended sword because there's always a risk of the company failing. It might report negative concerns, and pretty much any negative news can drive the stock price down in seconds. The way this can happen is if the company releases a product that everybody ends up hating, it will lead to some negative headlines. Also, don't underestimate the bad social media reviews. This usually lowers its price, and of course, the higher the returns are, the more risk occurs. So Apple, for example, is a company so well established that the risk of its failure are much lower than Tesla's, but it also has less room to grow, which is why Tesla grew by 721% and Apple by only 80% during the pandemic. So before you actually invest, sit down and decide how much risk you can take without going crazy. What this means is that if this $1,000 is the only money you have left, then think good weather is a wise option to risk, because if things go wrong, you risk losing most of it. The question now is, how do one-way investors minimize their risk in the stock market? By investing in an index. The most famous one is SP 500, which tracks the top 500 US companies. So an index fund will basically invest in these 500 companies, and some of them will fail while others will grow. If you look at the historical data, the average return rate for the SP 500 since the 1920s was around 10%, which means by buying a share of these index funds basically means that you are buying a tiny share in the top 500 US companies. Some of the best index funds are VOO or Vanguard 500 Index Fund, QQQ, an index fund by Invesco, and Fidelity Zero Total Market Index Fund. Whichever of these you choose, you probably won't make a mistake since all of those are pretty great and invest in the exact same companies. Now that you know about these index funds, let's talk about how you can buy shares in those index funds. To start off, you'll first need to find a broker, someone who is qualified to sell you stocks. Remember the Wolf of Wall Street? He would spend his entire day calling people trying to sell them stocks, but that's the old way of doing the work. In the modern year and age, we have brokerage companies that created apps like Robinhood and Wilbo, allowing you to buy stocks from anywhere in the world through your smartphone. And all you need to do is to download them from the App Store, create a profile, and you're ready to invest. What frequently happens when you want to start investing is that you have a million questions whose answers you start Googling online, and after some time you get so frustrated and exhausted that you end up giving up. Then you try again in a few months when you forget the frustration it caused you the time before, and the cycle continues. So think wisely, decide whether you're gonna do it or not, and then go step by step. This brings us to the end of today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure to hit that bell button so you can get notified whenever there's a new video ready for you.